One of the strongest voices of opposition on the national stage to the No Child Left Behind law, as currently written, has been a congressman from eastern Ohio whose district happens to have the highest poverty rate and lowest per capita income in the state. Ted Strickland, representing a strip stretching from Youngstown in the north to Athens and Ohio's rural Appalachian communities across the river from West Virginia and Kentucky in the south, has entered a bill that would remedy many flaws in the No Child Left Behind Act. Claiming a knowledge of how testing actually works that's superior to his peers in having been a practicing psychologist prior to seeking national office, Strickland is also ahead of both political parties in his recognition of the need for a rollback of No Child Left Behind's sink-or-swim approach to testing that he sees as hurting kids and driving them out of school. The steel towns of the Mahoning Valley have been noted in the past for labor's stormy battles against Big Steel. One hears echoes of that past fighting spirit in the words of Ted Strickland as he takes on today's version of Big Steel, the forces in business and government who are trying to remake education in the image of the factory and the corporation with the help of the No Child Left Behind law.
Well, I represent the poorest people in Ohio. Out of the 18 congressional districts, my district has the lowest per capita income. We have the highest poverty rates, the highest rates of unemployment. So I represent a lot of communities where the schools are struggling just to pay their bills, to meet their payrolls, to provide the kind of services that every child needs in order to succeed. And so as far as the No Child Left Behind is concerned, what I'm seeing is a lot of mandates being passed down from the federal government to the state government, and then of course the states placing those mandates on the local schools. But the local schools simply do not have the resources which they need to meet those mandates. And so teachers are being laid off, curriculum is being reduced and cut back, extracurricular activities are being curtailed. Students are being asked to pay more if they want to participate in extracurricular activities. So it's a huge burden on the families of the students and on the communities that are desperately trying to support their schools. Well, I represent a lot of college students who are first-generation college students. No one in their family has ever gone beyond high school, and so it means everything to the people in my district because as I said, the unemployment rate is high, jobs are difficult to find, and without the proper education and training opportunities available at an affordable cost, many of the constituents that I represent will simply be left behind. And so from the elementary schools all the way up through the college level, my constituents are struggling. Tuition costs in Ohio especially have increased dramatically over the last 3 years. And it is becoming more and more difficult for college students who want to pursue a higher education to be able to do so. But let me just be candid and say I think many of us in the House and in the Senate were snookered when we voted for the No Child Left Behind bill. I had serious concerns about this bill. From the very beginning, I testified before the House Education Committee, especially in regard to what I considered the almost irrational testing requirements that are in that bill and their implications. But we were promised many things in the No Child Left Behind bill. We were promised more money for handicapped and special needs children. We were promised more assistance to our schools generally. Lots of promises were made, and those promises have been broken. I feel betrayed. Many of my colleagues feel betrayed. It's not that we don't want standards, it's not that we don't want high-quality education, but we feel as if the bill was passed with promises attached to it. The President has broken those promises, and now the states and the local schools are being faced with these huge, costly mandates, and these testing requirements, in my judgment, are irrational. I think we should change the name of the bill from the No Child Left Behind to the No Child Left Untested. And we are testing children in ways that I think is unfair and perhaps unethical. And I think we're using these tests for destructive purposes rather than to help facilitate an improved instruction. And so many of us, certainly throughout Ohio, We feel angry, we feel betrayed, we feel like this bill needs to either be completely repealed or so dramatically altered, and we want the money that's supposed to go with it. We should both fund and we should both fix the No Child Left Behind bill. Well, they're just simply not telling the truth. The governor of Ohio, who is a Republican, commissioned a study to look at the impact on Ohio's schools from the No Child Left Behind bill, and they concluded this study, that was an independent study conducted by professionals with no political axe to grind. They found that Ohio was being shortchanged well over $1 billion a year in terms of the federal mandates and what the schools under No Child Left Behind are required to do. Now, Mr. Boehner came here to Columbus, Ohio. He held a hearing. I think what they were trying to do was present a rosy scenario to the people, but it simply has not washed. We know the truth. The people in this state know the truth, that we passed a bill at the federal level. We made promises attached to that legislation. Those promises have been broken, and now Ohio schools are suffering as a result. But as a psychologist, certainly I am not an enemy of testing. I think testing can be very helpful in the instructional process. In my judgment, though, testing for our school children should be used to diagnose and to help prescribe appropriate instruction. I think it's being used under this bill, and certainly here in Ohio, to punish and to sanction. And so I believe the tests are being used inappropriately. I also do have questions regarding the appropriateness of the particular test for the particular student or age group that's being tested. It seems to me that we've got a lot of people who have a blind faith in testing, as if it's some mystical, magical solution to all of our educational problems, not understanding that tests can be helpful. If tests are constructed with validity and reliability, if they are administered by people who know how to administer tests, if they are interpreted, and if those results are used for an appropriate purpose. But it seems to me that what's happening across this country and right here in the state of Ohio is that tests are being misused by people who probably don't have an adequate understanding of even how a test should be constructed, how it should be used, and certainly how it should be applied to the instructional process.